Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. This is Simon with AvaTrade, and I'm happy to welcome you to our weekly trading plan webinar. And of course, this special welcoming goes to new people. Okay, welcome. This is me, Simon Friedman, Senior Account Manager with AvaTrade. As I always say, it sounds weird. It looks like I'm advertising myself here, but this is true. I've been involved with trading for 23 years, over 23 years. I started as a professional prop trader back in New York City, and I did it for about 11 years. And after that, I guess I moved into a less stressful trading environment, and I started to mentor, educate other traders. And currently, I'm very happy that I'm able to assist our customers at AvaTrade. Now, the agenda of the webinar is pretty much the same every week. We talk a little bit of a big picture, what happened last week. We go through economic calendar, and then we go through indices, stocks, commodities, and Forex. Pretty much the same routine as we do every week. Risk warning. You can find a full statement at avatrade.com. What we do here is purely educational. Of course, we do not suggest any trades channels. You're more than welcome, and I actually encourage you to subscribe to our channels. You have Telegram, you have Twitter, you have a YouTube channel, which is my favorite. Reason being that it's being updated all the time. New material, webinars that are happening are being uploaded into YouTube channel. You have a lot of tutorials, educational material, tons of useful information. Please subscribe. Please click on that bell so you'll be notified when new things are coming in. Definitely feel free to share with your friends if you feel this is could be beneficial to them. And of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, I would encourage you to write any feedback, um, and that would be great for me to see things that I need to improve, things that are good. Whatever you feel it's relevant, feel free to write into your feedback on YouTube. Okay, so we'll start with economic calendar, and then we'll move into discussing what happened last week. So just important for new people to bring it up. Here in economic calendar, first of all, you can find it at our web trader or app if that's what you're using. You can find it anywhere else. This is public information, no secrets. It's available to everyone, and a lot of providers are sharing this information. Now, what I do here, I take out only high impact events because there are tons of them, and I just want to bring the most important ones. But you are free to browse through things and see whatever it's relevant to your trading, to the markets you trade, to the times that you trade, and so on. Okay. Now, some people ask the question: is it important to follow economic calendar? There are different opinions about it, but whether you follow it or not, I think it's important to be aware of certain things that are happening, especially major events like inflation and data, NFPs that we're having this week, decisions on interest rates, uh, any events that could create volatility in the market. It's good to know ahead of time so you wouldn't be caught by surprise in the trade or enter the trade into the news and so on. Just keep that in mind. Okay. So let's go through it again. This is just high impact events. There are much more of them. So Monday we have retail sales from Australia. Wednesday we have CPI numbers from Australia. Also we have CPI from Germany, and we have EDP employment change from ADP. That's the agency that reports before the NFP numbers come out on Friday, so we can get a little bit of an idea how many jobs could NFP show. It's not always indicating the right way, so anything could happen. Now, we have GDP numbers from US, also very important. Moving to Thursday, We have manufacturing PMI and non-manufacturing PMI from China, and that's being provided actually by China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing. Actually, I didn't know. I have to confess, I didn't know these differences, and the question I triggered to myself that I have two PMI numbers on different days, and they're both from China. So I did a little bit of research, which is good to educate yourself, and I'm happy that I learned this today. So this first number is provided by, as I said, by China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing. And they say that reading below 50 shows the contraction and above 50 shows the expansion. So we know China, we'll be discussing when we look at the Chinese market. But here we know that we're below 50 and China is in trouble economically. So, and the second report, I jumped to Thursday, I'll get back to it. And this report is being provided actually by S&P Global. And the way they do it, they send questionnaires to 400 private manufacturing sector companies, and that's how they get their number. And by the way, another thing you'll learn that S&P Global, it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest company that collects data. They're in business since 1860. So I learned quite some good information today. Anyway, so I just wanted to share with you. We have two numbers. One's provided by China, the other one is by S&P Global, and both of them are this week. So Thursday we have this PMI. We have CPI numbers from European Union. We have important number that being followed by Feds very closely. Core personal consumption expenditures, and that's also on Thursday from the US. And as we mentioned, another PMI number provided by S&P Global on China. CPI numbers from Switzerland, maybe will have some effect on Swiss franc. That's been strong lately. We have NFP early, as usually it's first Friday of the month. This is right on the 1st of September, so sometimes they skip it, but this week or this month we do have it. And it is coming out on this coming Friday. We have, of course, the number of jobs that are being added. So we have previous number 187, and now consensus is that 170 jobs were added in August. So let's see what happens. We also have, it's not showing here, but we're showing, we having the unemployment numbers and other things that coming with it. We have GDP numbers from Canada and manufacturing PMI from US. So these are the things that are coming out this week as far as the economic calendar. Okay. Now, China, as I mentioned to you, there's always issues. We had a lot of shutdown back during the COVID. As you remember, there was zero COVID policy. And then they realized that really hurting economy a lot. So they opened everything up, hoping that things will get fixed, but they didn't. So currently a lot of issues with the real estate sector as developers are falling, and there's bankruptcy issues coming out. And I just saw this article. You can look into it. It's on market. What's the name of the site? Marketwatch.com. And when you click on Barron's, you see this article, and pretty much it's just another way, I guess, the people in China panicking. So they're really not running into spending, and that's something that definitely will be affecting the economy because you know, the real estate and everything else has a strong effect. The issues in that sector, strong effect on the public and on the economy. And now they bring up the issue. Of course, it makes sense that if you're really not feeling secure, you're not going to run. As I always say, you know, if you don't have money to pay rent or your utilities, you're not going to run into buying a new television or new car or anything. Okay, so something to pay attention. and a lot of it to do with China. All right, so we're gonna move now to the MT4, and let's start actually with China. But before we go there, I'm gonna bring the chart in, but just want to share what happened last week. So two things, as I mentioned to you when we were discussing things the last webinar, we said the two major events, that's the NVIDIA report on earnings that happened Wednesday after the market closed. And then there's a speech of Powell at Jackson Hole Symposium. So NVIDIA had crazy positive reports on earnings. The stock was up tremendously. We'll take a look in a moment. The stock was up, but then it gave in. And Powell's speech was pretty much what was expected. They're still sticking to the same policy, and it's all about bringing the inflation, and it's all watching the coming data and making their decisions based on that. But it wasn't as negative as last year's speech when the market sold. So things were kind of priced in. He was a little hawkish, not super hawkish. So the market actually reacted to the upside on Friday. So we'll take a look in a moment. So again, NVIDIA reported great, stock went up tremendously, but then it came into the pre-announcement or pre-reporting levels. We'll take a look in a moment. Okay, so let's see China for a moment. We've been selling since, if you remember, I mentioned this 13,300 level many times. We've been selling. Then it looks like we came to retest this 12,500 level. We went below. And if you look at the weekly chart, it's been 3 consecutive weeks to the downside. And this last week, we ended up flat pretty much. We closed where we opened. So again, this week's PMI data definitely will be affecting what's happening in Chinese index. We'll be watching that. And as usual, I bring the instruments that are being affected by Chinese index. Those are copper. Copper actually had a little bit of recovery here, but we're hitting the 50 and 100 moving average. So that's copper. The crude oil also is sold. Now we're retesting this 80 level. And two currency pairs, as they call them, commodity currencies, that's Australian and New Zealand dollar. They've been super weak. Of course, it's not just because China, it's the strength of the US dollar is playing, I think, the major roles in the selling of these pairs. But nevertheless, the situation in China is affecting this currency, the Australian and New Zealand dollar. Okay, let's jump to US indices. And we start with Dow Jones. Dow Jones on Friday rose 0.7% and finished the week down 0.4%. And as you could see, it's a second consecutive week. Last week was a stronger sell-off. This week, it's a little bit less, but still pressure on the Dow. S&Ps rose 0.7% on Friday and 0.8% for the week. So it ended up positive. And the Nasdaq was strong. I think a lot of it due to the NVIDIA report, of course. It gained 2.3% for the week. As you could see here, that's into the report of NVIDIA. Nasdaq had a very strong day, and then Thursday sold, and then Friday we had the positive day, ended up in a positive territory. So let's take a look. S&Ps, here we have clear levels at least. The level here, the low of 43.68.5, from which we bounce and then we came back again to retest it on the 18th of August, where the run we came back. So it looks like we were trying to test this level around 43.70, and so far we're holding it as a support, and also so far we didn't have a closing below 100 moving average here. So S&Ps we'll take it as a general indication, as a more balanced index and a major index that most of the traders in the world are watching for the situation in the equity market. So as of now, we are holding this 43.70. We are above the 100 moving average. And let's see what this week will bring to us. Again, very important, before I forget, we are entering the last week of August, which in my experience of 23 years, in general, August is slow, and the last week of August is super slow. So just keep that in mind when you trade. Maybe adjust your dynamics, adjust the way you trade. Usually the volume is very low during this last week, and things are different. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's as far as indices. We survived Powell's speech, as I said. Nothing major happened, nothing negative. And let's take a look at European indices. Similar situation here in DAX. As you could see, we are retesting this major level of around 15,600. We had resistance here, then we built support. We made a nice run from this level back in the beginning of July. We tried it again. We closed on Thursday right on that level, and Friday we bounced. So it looks like for now around 15,600 it holds support on DAX. UK index is not so strong. As you could see here, similar situation, but at the much lower levels. We had a triple bottom here. The first attempt was in March, then again in July, and then again 18th of August. And we are holding that level. Friday, we had the bounce with all the indices towards the end of the day. So we'll see how this week plays. Again, keep in mind, it's the last week of August, slow week normally. Doesn't mean there are no opportunities there. It just means that maybe you need to readjust your trading for this week. Okay, so let's take a look at NVIDIA. We move it to stocks. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to bring the MT5 platform. It's opening up now. Okay, here it is. So here's NVIDIA stock. As you could see here on Thursday, so into the news on Wednesday, the stock was up and it went as high as 470. And the following day after the earnings, we opened at 481, and then we sold. And Friday we tried to recover, but after the news, after the announcement, I was watching NVIDIA. NVIDIA went to 515, even 520, and then it retraced. So who knows what it was? It could be maybe some even short sellers covering, or maybe excitement was so high that they're willing to pay high price. But in the pre-market, in the aftermarket after the earnings, because they reported Wednesday night after the U.S. market got closed, the stock went to 515, 520 levels. I don't remember exactly. It doesn't show, of course, the extended hours here on this platform, but you can take a look at yourself. So now a few things. I did a little bit of research, and there's a company called Piper Sandler, the investment company, and I'm just going to read what they say over here. We are reiterating the overweight rating on NVIDIA and increasing our price target to 620, which is 35 times P, that's price to earnings ratio, on estimated fiscal 2025 earnings per share of $17.66 following blockbuster July quarter results from the company. Results and guidance were nicely ahead of even the most bullish expectations on the street. Okay, so what it means, they're saying that even the bullish expectations were not enough. The NVIDIA really beat all the expectations. And I continue quoting, most important, much of the growth is coming from the data center business, which grew a stunning 141% sequentially in the July quarter. We anticipate that the data center business will deliver in the neighborhood of 12.5 billion for the October quarter, up 21% sequentially. As much giving the upside to the guidance, we are now forecasting greater than 60 billion worth of data center business revenue for the company for fiscal 2025. Interesting. I didn't know that also. I'm not following individual stocks into such depth, but if we speak NVIDIA, we speak about chips and hardware that they produce, especially now for the artificial intelligence. Apparently, there's a huge part of their business to do with data centers, which is really, really amazing. Okay, so again, let's see. This is the kind of prognosis from the company, and the setting a target is $620. That is about $150 from now, going higher. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so that's NVIDIA. Let's move back to MT4. Definitely, as I mentioned, I like to watch the leaders as Apple. Until recently was the first $3 trillion company, and since the latest sell-off, I think since the last report with some concerns on the iPhone sales, the stock went down. So it looks like we did hold the 175 mark here since we went down from almost $200 per share. So let's see what Apple does as the leading company, in my opinion. So Tesla has been selling, if you remember, since they announced the cutting the prices in China. We did dip nicely from 240 level. We mentioned that. And this week, we're actually holding steadily and nicely. We closed at 238.46. We might go into retesting that 240 level. And if it remains resistance and if the market has further pressure to the downside, we might move lower. And if the opposite happens, if we actually lift, if Tesla lifts his head above 240 and start building support, and market will be merciful and strong going to the upside, we might see actually continuation to the upside on Tesla. Netflix, also we are playing with the series levels here around $414. As you could see here, we made the high, we retested again, we went below and above again, and now we are again testing this level. So as usual, if we are holding support, there's a chance of moving higher. If we are having a hard time and start really forming here a resistance below this 414, 415 level, we might see continuation to the downside. That's as far as Netflix. Now, banking sector are super weak. There were a lot of downgrades and rating cuts and so on in the banking sector, and it also affects the big guys here. Bank of America, as you could see, has been selling and not really moving higher. Goldman Sachs, since this recent sell-off, not much energy going up. Even JP Morgan, that kind of a leader and the one that swallowed all the troubled banks, it's having a hard time bouncing from the recent sell-off. Citigroup, super low. Let's take a look what that level, right? 40.77, the level that I marked here, that was the level of October of 2020. Then we retested it again in October 2022 after 2 years, and now we're testing it again. So the Citigroup, it looks like the weakest one, and we are really having trouble bouncing off this level here. So we'll be definitely watching that. So just as a group, banking stocks are really important to watch. We might continue lower, we might bounce at some point. Of course, it will be depending on a lot of things, and then including next actions of the Feds and in general, the mood on the markets. And I want to bring Teva. We spoke about it a few times in the past. The stock looks very healthy here. Take a look. If you remember, I mentioned it first time recently when we coming off this about 720, 730, we spoke about it. And the reason being, I said that the stock has a tendency of traveling between $7 and $11. And take a look after this move, even a gap up here, we are holding, and I think we recently almost hit the 10. That was beginning of August, 997, and pretty much we are in green here, which indicates a possibility of moving higher, and we are above the 200 moving average. So maybe we'll have another stretch that will take us to that key $11, which would complete the mission, at least for now. But let's see what happens. So that's on Teva. Let's move to commodities. And we spoke last week about the usual suspects: gold, oil, natural gas, wheat, and corn. And specifically, I mentioned the platinum on the possibility of moving higher around these levels, and actually worked out very nicely. If you remember, I mentioned this level around 906.80. And as I mentioned, that we came back into the support area after being a resistance for a while. So take a look. The whole week we've been going nicely. So we went from that level, 906, 907 level, all the way to 951.5, and we were as high as 955, and we are above the 50 moving average over here. So let's see what happens. Let me try something. It looks like we might be challenging. Yeah, we might be challenging this trend line, which connects the previous highs here, as you could see, back in June, and the second one in July. So let's see how we're acting around here. As of now, we are between the 50 and 100 moving average. We could be troubling. Definitely we'll be watching what gold is doing, and gold has been also strong, pretty strong this week. We'll definitely be watching that. We had a little bit of cooling on the 10-year yields. That would help gold moving, and I think the sell-off in the equities also helped boosting gold a little bit, because on the dollar sign, I'm just going to jump really quickly. On the dollar sign, when dollar's been strong, we'll get there in a moment. So that's on gold. Let's see what happens. The only thing, I don't know if I mentioned, no, last week, I think it wasn't there yet, but we are showing here something they called dead cross, and some analysts like to use that into their trading strategies, as literally that means a selling sign. When the 50-day moving average goes below the 200, they're called a dead cross, and some consider it as a signal for possible shorting. So again, we'll definitely be watching that. Similar to crude oil, as I mentioned, I think last week or week before, it's the opposite. We have the golden cross with the 50 moving average cross above, and it might be triggering the buying, which it shows like it looks like it's working. And then the China selling the last 2 days, we had bouncing on oil. So, but we are holding this 80 level. So if we do break the 80 level and start building support, we might see push to the upside. And the natural gas, like some of my colleagues were asking me last week, what's about natural gas? I said it's not an easy product to trade these days. as it drives everybody crazy around 260 level. Take a look. We had resistance, then we broke. We start building support way below, then retest 3 again, below again, and so on. But what we have in favor of natural gas, that's similar to oil, we actually have a golden cross, which is $50 moving average above the 200. So we did bounce of 245 level, which is also a previous support. So maybe one of these days we have this move. As you know, that natural gas has a tendency to do nothing for a very long time and then shoot up like it did here, like this sold over here, like this extended move. So anything could happen. We could fly and break the 3, or we can fall and break the 2. We are actually right in between. We are at 254. Let's see what happens in natural gas. All right, and the softies, let's take a look at them really quick. Wheat. Wheat is retesting the previous support. What's the level was here? 588.5. Let's just fix it really quick. So 588.5. That was a support from which we had the fake breakdown and move to the upside. Very strong, intense move to the upside. And take a look, we are sitting right on that level. So far managing to hold it. And it looks like we're accumulating in a nice channel here. So again, fundamentally speaking, a lot of it to do with a crisis or a war, unfortunately, in Ukraine, and Russia bombing the facilities and creating a lot of issues that Ukraine is having a hard time to export its wheat. So let's see if we hear anything of fundamentals. Technically speaking, so far we're holding this level after the recent sell-off. Let's see. And corn, similar situation. We are sitting here. There's some kind of consolidation going on. The difference is we are below the previous support, so it's more bearish here. Potentially, we could move lower. Again, if we dip below this recent low, let's see what it is, 462.25, we might tank. And if we come above the 473 and start building support or rebuilding to support, we might see a move to the upside. Again, a lot of it definitely, especially in the soft commodities, a lot of ingredients that we need to take into consideration. That's weather, the seasonals, and of course, the war in Ukraine is paying or playing a big role in the prices of grains. Okay, so that's as far as wheat and corn. Let's move to Forex. As I mentioned, dollar has been strong. We are playing with the 104 again, which was a major area for a while. We've been challenging it. That was back in May, and after a lot of consolidation here, we moved lower and then created a lower low, and then we have a nice move to the upside, very consistent with few profit taking. And as of now, let's see what that initial stop was. High 104.23. Yeah, I put it about the same. So we are challenging it, and if we are same scenario, if we do manage to break above it and start building support, we might open a new space for the new move to the upside. And if not, we might slide lower and retest 103 again. And of course, if you take all the major pairs, they work a similar way. Euro is sold. And if you remember, 110 was the level, then 19 was the level, and now it's 108. So we're below all the major averages, the 50, 102, and we're sitting around 108. Pound, we mentioned pound, 126.63 area, and on Thursday It was intense sell-off. Friday we continued. So now the level that played a nice support role for a while, it looks like we are in the resistance scenario now. And if we continue lower, we could be reaching the 200 moving average. That could be the next stop. Another way of looking at it is possible support here, from which we shoot to the upside, and that's 125.90. So let's see what pound will be doing. And of course, Australian and New Zealand dollar, they have a double impact. One is the strength of a dollar. Second is, of course, the situation in China, not so friendly for these currencies. Dollar yen. Dollar yen held the support around 144.80, 145, and it looks like we are on the way to challenge the recent highs. As I mentioned, and I say it again because one day we probably hear some news that are positive for Japanese yen, but as of now, the Bank of Japan still hasn't done anything as far as increasing the rates. So yen, Japanese yen remains weak. And the pair or two pairs that I wanted to bring, something that I mentioned to you last week, that's the Euro Swedish krona. So far, we're holding this resistance here. Actually, on Wednesday, it was a nice move to the downside. Whoever took this trade could have made some profit. It was a quick one because we returned right back. So that's on Euro SEK. We're still holding that resistance. And on dollar SEK, of course, because of the strength of a dollar, we did break through it. So we're still going to watch it. We'll see if this move continues. And if it does, similar to the Japanese yen, we might see retesting the highs. Okay, so that's as far as the Swedish krona against euro and dollar. USD ZAR. USD ZAR is selling even the strength of a dollar. I don't know, maybe it's due to the BRICS. There was the meeting they had in Johannesburg when the BRICS members met. That's China, India, South Africa, and many other countries discussing things and possibly inviting more countries in that alliance. So maybe because of that, the strength of the ZAR happened because dollar was strong, not weak, but the pair went down this past week. So we'll be watching that. USD Hungarian forint, something that I mentioned to you, it's holding the current strength. So we could be setting up for continuation to the upside. And the Turkish lira, it's a hard currency to trade, of course, but finally it showed, Turkish lira showed some strength. So there were some actions by Turkish bank, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember or don't know the details, so I'm not going to make it up, but definitely they did something. And there was a little bit of a strength of Turkish lira, and Friday it was a reversal, so we'll give away or we regained maybe some 50-60% of that sell. So that's as far as Forex. We established that the dollar is strong, it's holding 104. Let's see what this week will show for a dollar, and of course the major currency will act accordingly. And let's take a quick look at Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, after this recent sell-off, we're pretty much sitting at the same area. As you could see here, nothing's happening. So is it quiet before the storm? We'll see, I guess, what happens there. Because the strength of a dollar and the weakness of the equity markets is contributing to the weakness of the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, as they are in the group of risky assets. So when the market is on risk on, or the equity market's risk on, and sometimes cryptocurrencies are moving in the same direction. Okay, so that's it pretty much with technicals. Just put it all together. We have some major events that includes PMIs from China, and I think number one as an important event, that's the NFP numbers from US on Friday, and that's one of the numbers that the Feds are really watching closely, and also the consumer expenditure numbers are coming. So we have serious numbers this week. Definitely we'll be watching that. Let's see what the market is doing. Let's see what the dollar is doing. And I think definitely we should be watching what China is doing after this round of PMI numbers. And it looks like a lot of troubles are coming from there. And it is affecting not just Chinese market, it affects the global market. So I want to wish you a great weekend. I think this is the last summer weekend, right? We still have a little bit left out of it as we're entering September next Sunday or next weekend. And definitely, I want to wish everyone a successful week. Keep in mind that's last week of August. Adjust your trading, watch your risks, and have a wonderful week. All the best.